Well, hello, hello, hello. I'm waiting for our host. I think she's coming in now. But welcome to the Crew Podcast. I'm waiting for my host. I think she's coming on, waiting for her to come on, and then she's going to come live. But I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Crew Podcast. I think she's back here, so let me move out the way and allow her to come on.
Greetings, greetings. I am excited beyond measure because it gives me an opportunity to always have certain parts of this broadcast brought forward by the illustrious, visionary, and I always call her Sister Queen, Angela, because she just brings so much vibe. Check it out, Queen Angela Thomas in parentheses Smith. So just want to highlight for the purposes of upliftment that I'm always grateful and giving honor and praise. I am also joyous to have come in even before I arrived, be running up through the rainforest in St. Croix, bearing over the bend to get to a special space to be able to be part of the crew podcast, this gathering of powerful queens that are live every night except Saturday to really bring truth to power, share our word, sound, power, and strength, to share our spiritual views, our cultural views, our political views, our economic views, our psychological views, and to really bring energy that highlights that which gives us strength through our ancestors and through the power of the divine by all the names that are honorable and sacred that we use in English and other terms. And I'm also excited tonight because, as we open up this first and third broadcast that's shared as Oz Speaks through yours truly, Queen Mother Dr. Chenzira, I am joined tonight by one of my spirit sisters, a sister that is powerful, empowering, direct. So I want to go back to some adjectives: illustrious, grounded in ancestral veneration, honoring ancestors par excellence, an author, a comfort. I won't let her teach you about that day. A spiritual guide, leader, steward, a sister that cares about humanity in ways that bring truth to power, restore integrity and loyalty. And I have to just take a breath on this one. And a sense of humor that is parallel to none. I want to highlight that, to be able to bring critique, not criticism, emotional care with compassion, not sympathy, patheticism, right? Not that pessimism kind of energy, but sharing and caring with solutions that are blessed and granted through her. So, with that, I'd like us to welcome, I'm seeing her getting her camera steady and ready. I'd like to welcome the sister I refer to as Spirit Sister and Queen, Nana Kofier of the Sankofier community in Jamaica. We'll highlight, we're going to bring it up. We're bringing a little extra Caribbeanness to the night. So, greetings, Nana. How are you doing?
I am absolutely wonderful. It's such a blessing to be here. I pray I can live up to all that you have just said, but I informed the ancestors. They've heard you.
There we go. That's how we start. That's how
Yes,
we
I'm
start.
telling you. So
I think
I told them they better
I
come through, they better come through for
better
us.
come true. Better come true. No, I said that's okay. I kept water. I brought some room temperature water. I even brought a little water, a little cool water, to keep everything copacetic, as they say, and for us to be able to share with our listeners, our viewers, because we have listeners and viewers that follow the the Crew podcast on a regular. So we're always grateful for that. We say good evening to one of our fellow host, Sister Queen Shanette Johnson, who's joined us in the platform. And we've already given our greetings to the visionary and the lead producer of this particular gathering of sister queens that are bringing this type of truth to power, Sister Queen and Visionary Angela. And there are others that are part of the network, and there's going to be a shift as we prepare for the 2025 podcast season, because it's going to be even more powerful work, publications. There are publications on poetry, on prose, on persons doing things around biblical scripture, and a lot of other informative, edutaining, edifying types of publications that are brought through this network. So we're looking forward to that. So tonight, and there's so many things that have happened. You'll see me taking sips of water because I did like this 3.5 hour hike up into the
Ooh.
sanctuary, Maroon Sanctuary grounds in the northwestern quadrant of St. Croix in Freedom City today. And the ancestors are indeed pleased and were definitely present as we walked on these sacred grounds, uh, really sharing with some visitors that we had from representatives of the National Park Service, representatives of the Virgin Islands Architecture Center for built heritage and crafts. It was wonderful to have representatives coming from the Ghana Museums and Monuments Board and the embodiment of visiting scholar Brother Kwame Samuel Akwa. It was excellent to have Brother Professor Olasni Davis of the University of the Virgin Islands and the St. Croix Hiking Association, among other iterations, to guide this tour and share, being up on the top by the lighthouse and being able to convene with our ancestors and those that made the choice of freedom beyond enslavement or any form of trafficking in earlier years, and to actually go up to other plateaus where ancestors were able to hide in preparation to escape from enslavement and trafficking. And then to go even higher to the actual stones and rocks and spaces where they were able to, that are still in place now, where they were able to flee, and to watch the expanse of the sea where you could see from St. Croix, north side, to St. John, Tortola, St. Thomas, bits of Culebra, and Vieques, and on the far distance, Puerto Rico. So it lets us know that even though St. Croix is somewhat remote from the other parts of the Virgin Islands and from other parts of the Caribbean, that our ancestors did not even let the sea keep them in the midst of enslavement in any form. So, do unto. We just say give thanks and praise. I think that the water I went up the hill to drink, I ended up doing offerings. So I just was grateful that I did not become dehydrated because the ancestors knew my intention. I had some water for libations, and then it rained. So I said, I'll just use some of the water for libations. But when I got to the top, I had to keep giving my drinking water, and then I was fine. I felt a little parched, but I had enough water in the body. People shared water. When it rained, I put my head up, so I was fine. So I give thanks. I give thanks. I give thanks. So
Beautiful.
share with us, Nana Fofie, some as we close out this Gregorian calendar year of 2025. What are some words of strength, words of enlightenment, words of power you'd like to give to our listening and viewing audience?
Wow, there has been so much that has been coming into our consciousness regarding how we go forward, from we're bidding goodbye to the Gregorian year in a short space of time. And as we embrace a new Gregorian year, there's been so much, as we embrace a number of different New Years. We celebrated earlier the Akan New Year, and in March, of course, the China New Year. We actually have quite a few celebrations around this New Year idea. But
Mm-hmm.
as we go from one to the next, I have just been, you know, just really impressed by the amount of guidance that we have been getting from our ancestors and from spirit world about how to hold our own in what's going to be a pretty turbulent space. There's going to be a continuation of the kind of change and the kind of unsettled energy that we've been seeing in the space. And we have clear advice about how to use the methodologies of community and spirituality as balancing um, strategies through this time. And of course, it doesn't mean that we won't participate in the turbulence and in all that's going on. But what it means that we'll come out ahead of the game. We'll come out with our sanity. We'll be holding our sanity there, and we'll be coming out, protected. We'll be coming out in balance, as much in balance as we can be. Once we have done what we've been guided to do, once we stick close to our ancestors, once we follow the teachings, once we start dwelling in community and extending a duty of care to each other, as we have been mandated to do since creation. And so I think this period of time that we've been going through, I think is a call to reckoning, a call to say, well, have we been faithful as human beings? Have we been faithful to our humanity? We been faithful to our spirituality? We been faithful to who we are coming into this space with the responsibility to lead, to teach, to guide, to mentor, to help to restore balance? I think this is definitely a time of accounting, a time when, the celestial space is saying to us down on this earth space, do we have it together here? Are we holding it together? Are we making sure that everyone is well? Are we looking at well-being as an objective in life? Not just health, but way beyond health, that whole thing of well-being, where it's not just about the physical, but about the spiritual, about the intellectual, the mental, the social, the economic, looking with a holistic view at how we're navigating the earth space and saying, we have walked away from much that kept us in well-being. And now it's a time to turn around. We're not going to go back and fetch everything, but in the teaching of Sankofa, going to fetch what is needed to help us now to navigate a future. And we're talking about a future that is wholesome, a future where we stop walking away from, but start walking further towards where we're coming from, because we cannot be other than who we have been and who we are. So walking back into who we are, whole beings, with a sense of love and caring for each other, with a sense of love and caring, and knowing how to live in community, how to live well. And I'm talking too much, right?
Absolutely not. See, while you were talking, and I didn't share this part in the memo. So, for the balance of our broadcast for this month, everyone is required to bring a glass of choice. I'm having a natural beverage made of peach juice that's slightly carbonated. So, for those that think that I'm having a cocktail, it may appear so, but it is from very natural organic peach juice. I just want to highlight that. And I'm sipping between all of the wonderful nuggets of knowledge and wisdom
Okay.
and understanding that you're sharing. So it's important that we speak to that. Some
Yes,
people like to talk about, yeah, yeah. Go ahead, please.
it's interesting that you bring to the table the conversation, this confirmation on drinking something natural, because that's definitely one of the messages we've been getting. Going back to look at our natural energies. What is it that flows through us naturally? What is it that comes to us naturally? We do an everyday wearing of many masks. That's
Mm,
at this point not serving us well anymore. And so
right.
one of the things that Spirit spoke to in this house earlier this year was the whole thing of going to look back at what our natural energies are and take the responsibility to restore us. What are the natural ways that we navigate with a God being? How do we make meaning of that? How do we navigate with nature? How do we make meaning of nature? How do we position nature? How do we position ourselves as part of our adjunct to nature? How are we looking at embracing gratitude, embracing humility, embracing empowerment, embracing freedoms, embracing so much that is part of the natural flow of life, but a lot of which has walked into very unnatural and imbalanced spaces? how do we reclaim balance? How do we nurture that? And how do we ensure that we stay in balance most often than not? Because you will always, if you go to duality, you will always have the question of imbalance. But if you go to the idea and the divine law of divine oneness, you will see that all has to dwell together well
Yeah.
for us to be whole, for us to be able to function, and for us to claim any kind of, shall I use the word, happiness for
Ah,
ourselves. So we have to create those realities through how we make meaning, through how we re-engage with our natural energies and how those natural energies flow to really walk into this kind of joy and happiness and wonderfulness that we want from life.
and that's what it's funny you bring that because again, you're always present. We were having a conversation earlier, and part of what was happening in that gathering, and they used a very interesting term, an archeo cafe.
An
So
RQ cafe.
yes, it was archaeology, and it was ecology, and it was culture, and it was history and heritage preservation blended in a versation with some scholars, but speaking in the context of what do we do to create community that's supportive of this type of ancestral veneration of our legacy in contemporary times, and starting from the monuments that we hold dear, the museums that are usually forts and spaces with dungeons and other lower energy spaces, and how do we give a narrative to some of these spaces that are historically accurate and culturally appropriate or sensitive, and make it interesting and inviting so that our future generations have a desire to even know
Exactly.
and to preserve these things. Not so much preserve that you should celebrate enslavement, that's not what we're saying, but to honor and celebrate the strength, the thrivability, not just the survivability, but the thrivability of us, our ancestors, and our ascendants, our future ascendants that are coming through these same corridors, these same pathways, these same trods. So it was wonderful to hear from brothers and sisters from the continent, from other parts of Eurasia, from Central and South America, Canada, North America, of course, the Caribbean, and the 48 contiguous US in the same space where everyone, and if they didn't agree, they got over what they didn't agree with, accepted the truth that our truth to our narratives have to be told without erasure, without apology, and with truth and honor to our ancestors. So to hear that, and then to hear the silence of those that know that they have been responsible, at least in this community here in the Virgin Islands, specifically here in St. Croix, that they are responsible and are puppets in a system that doesn't facilitate the type of truth and honor and integrity that we speak of. It made them pause, and it kept them silent in this very public space before I came to do this session with you. So I'm coming and I'm bringing that in the context because I've asked people that to come and listen and watch to see how these are the types of things. 'Cause this is what's happening everywhere. It's now very trendy. I'm going to use that term, very trendy. People weren't into Africa and African consciousness and finding out, putting altars inside of museums and old forts and thing. People wasn't doing that before. But now people recognize that they go into these spaces, they touch the walls, they bawl and cry and feel every spirit that they thought they weren't going to feel that went through these doors of no return. And now it's becoming a common space to, you don't go inside of Elmina Castle and not bring an offering. whether you believe in African traditional institutions or not, you're gonna bring a wreath, a flower. You're gonna bring something. You're gonna leave something in one of those kanas and those altar sacred spaces in 2024 for sure.
Yeah,
So and I know you've seen that, and I know you've experienced that. So that's
yeah,
the other reason why I ask,
yes.
what are some things that you sense that we should highlight moving forward?
It's interesting that you mentioned Elmina because, and you mentioned the offering because if you don't bring one, one is taken from you, and it could be, yes, it is true. It
It's
could be
true.
all the tears. Tears can be a wonderful tribute,
Mhm,
um, in a space, um, where you are powerfully led to cleanse, to release, and to really kind of offer that as an opportunity for the ancestral energies in that space to feel recognized, to feel remembered. So, sometimes people don't realize that one way or the other, they're leaving something there. And if it's not even that, it's their footprints, it's their energy. So one way or the other, we give that. People have walked out of the understanding of, how we are energetically. And that everywhere you go, you leave a print, you leave something. And it's just to me very, very powerful that we can walk back. We can see ourselves walking back. And I think this time and this space, again, as I said, is a reckoning. But I think there's such potential for growth. There's a great potential, and I'm sure so much is going to be destroyed. And this is
mhm.
where we have to stand firm. So much is going to be destroyed, from perspectives to governments to buildings. There's going to be a lot of destruction, but in a useful way, because I said to somebody the other day, some places in the world need to be demolished,
That's right.
washed, as grandmother said, washed down with jizz
There you go.
and betel,
That's right.
then smudged,
That's how.
then smudge with white sage, smudge with sandalwood, smudge with all things we can do. And then the rebuilding has to happen.
Right.
But some of that, not all of it, some of it can be prevented, because if people start doing the cleansing work, the rebuilding, the releasing a lot of the negativity that we have introduced in our cultures, reducing and releasing so much of other people's cultures that we have commandeered, or that has been forced upon us, and we now hold so dear that you can't tell that we never born with that. You
Right.
know,
Right.
yes, I mean, I still am amazed at people who embrace Christianity in some certain ways. Christianity was used to enslave us, and they're black skinned people, black minded people, black people who go out there and die for the Christ today. I mean, really,
Mhm.
ask
It
some
happened.
questions at least before you do that. Now, before you offer yourself to be good, ask a couple questions.
Right. Because if you.
To me,
Mhm,
at
mhm.
least know why you're doing what you're doing, and know that you're making an informed choice to do that. But
And
we're just going around sometimes like we have no capacity to think, we have no capacity to reason. And we need to stop that, because that's not a natural energy for Black people. We built the pyramids. That's not a natural energy flow for us. That's not our natural energy. We're innovative. We didn't become cargo and illiterate and dark because somebody said so. That's not possible. It's not people's words that make who you are. It's you who know yourself and define yourself. That's what's important. And so going into this new space of time, these are some things we have to seriously look at. How do we define ourselves? Who are we? What is our identity? People take the conversation of identity very, very superficially. But if you look, part of the whole system of enslavement was founded on um, the whole principle of removing people from their identity, separating them, change their names, give them another name for God and another meaning for God, changing so much about who you are. And it was successful to a certain extent, but can we now successfully reverse that? Come into our own languages, come into our own, claim back our own names. Our names carry a vibration that is unique to itself. Languages have vibration. So even us speaking English language, more of us. need to learn to speak one or the other language of our ancestors, if it's even to greet, but
Yep.
pay some tribute, show even that little respect, even to learn to greet. Something, a couple words, something, claim that. Sometimes don't need a lot, you just need to do a lot with the little that you have.
I'll
Learn two
echo.
words and use them.
Right.
Learn two words in any one of your ancestral languages and use them. Keep that thread, keep that connection. So going forward, we have to be looking very intently at, this is who we are, is not, we don't have anybody to save us. We have the big question of accountability, and we have the big question of how do we create the reality that we want. On Sunday in our group conversation, our conversation was, about, in a funny kind of way, taking that job of being the CEO of your life and writing your job description. You are the CEO of your life. Write your job description.
That's a
What are we
very
going
good
to?
challenge.
Yes, it was funny, but it was so profound. And the ancestors brought that message. So going into the next phase of our life, we have to figure how we take charge of our lives. And
Right.
being the CEO in our lives, how do we conduct? What strategies we use? What methodologies we bring into play? What are going to be our core values? What are going to be what's going to be our sacred principles? How are we going to go forward into this space that we're entering as we engage with the various new years? How do we do that? How do we, it's in a lot of ways, it's the same old year coming around. What are you going to do to make it new? Because we're calling it a new year. It have the same name. All the months are same. Nothing has changed here. So what are we going to make it new? Because what we can do is really focus on making ourselves new. Learn some new ways of looking at life, some more elevated ways of looking at life, some more useful ways of looking at life. We need to stop. There's so many behaviors that were introduced to us in many of our spaces, or in our indigenous peoples. We never had child abuse. We never have spouse abuse. We never have a whole heap of those things. How do we now, in holding ourselves accountable, see us shaping a reality where those things are taboo? They don't happen. No.
I think that
We
it's
have,
incredible. It's incredible that you're saying you were definitely here with us in St. Croix today, because these are these are comments and points that you're stating that were highlighted early this morning before we went on this hike to the Sanctuary lands. While we were on this hike, this conversation came forward too, that if our people, especially our children, knew who they were,
uh,
embraced in an identity that respected their ancestral legacy in its highest sense, not in its low sense, in its highest sense, that they would not be killing one another. They would
oh
not be
no,
doing these drive-bys. We wouldn't keep finding missing children, dismembered,
no.
or
Those
women
things were
and men.
natural for us.
Right, right, right. And right now there has been such a frequency in these types of horrific events and homicides and patricide and matricide and infanticide and femicide and all other types of sides, that persons have become literally catatonic, like non-feeling, like non-responsive,
Exactly.
and that's not natural for us. And so through letting persons see, like there were certain youth, there was a youth that traveled with us today, and is doing interns. And what's interesting is that his area of study is engineering. However, he has a very personal interest and a minor study, which is now becoming a major study. So he may end up getting dual degrees in cultural heritage preservation and Caribbean studies, because it's becoming clear to him that for him to become a civil engineer and to actually be able to shift on the infrastructure developments, hardscape, landscape, and otherwise in the future for his children and his grandchildren and his great grandchildren, that he
Hmm.
needs to know this history and legacy accurately, that he
That's
needs to go
correct.
to spaces where people, like, even when we find a cup or a piece of plastic or things, we went up in a part of the ridge and found a plastic cup that shouldn't be up there, because this is an area that only the cattle and wild goat trump and people. So we know that that plastic cup from whichever company Dixie it came from couldn't have just up and grow off a tree. You understand? And somebody just left that cup in a very, and so, needless to say, all of us, it seemed like everybody must have picked that cup up and anything else we found. So we had our little patch of 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 trash when we came back down the hill, because that's at least those of us that go into these spaces, because we know you can't go into a Jewish cemetery and leave nothing. You can't go into the Arlington Cemetery where the military um, so, bodies are buried and leave nothing. You
Yes.
understand
I
where we
use it
going?
as a photo op.
You understand?
I see I've heard of.
So, oh,
You don't desecrate the space like that.
oh, so and that's what's important, that there's organizations, there's so many organizations that have to be mentioned, because you've heard me mention the National Park Service. We
Okay.
speak of, the Virgin Islands National Park out of St. John, the Christiansted Historic Heritage Park in St. Croix, along with others, because it's also Buck Island Monument, Salt River, uh, heritage site as well. But that's more of the Salt River is really connected to the indigenous preservation of lands, and that's a site where the genocidist Christophe Colomb, some call him Columbus,
Oh,
attempted to come into Salt River on November 14th, 1493, and was kept at sea by
yeah.
Taíno women who killed
Yeah,
all on the boat that tried to come into St. Croix, except one, to send him back to tell them, don't come here, in an
that's
area that they
correct.
call Cabo de Fletas, which translates to the Cape of Arrows. So that's a historic space, a national heritage space. And the entire island from there to north side, where the Maroons had their encampments and were able to flee to different islands for their freedom, some choosing to give their life to the sea instead of remaining in enslavement. There's like all the way to Contentment, one of the oldest enslavement communities in St. Croix, all the way to East End, out what they're calling Point Udall, which is the easternmost point of lands owned by the United States. And it's interesting that this entire 84 square miles of St. Croix has been designated as a National Heritage Area. However, there are forces that are trying to keep us from being able to move that type of
There
cultural
you go.
heritage
Yes.
preservation forward. And people are catching on. You can't go to these spaces and these sites and not pour at least water and give
You know?
a word
Yes.
of silence, or else your body gonna fall off the side of the hill. You're gonna
Right.
get smacked by that.
Some recognition, make some connection. Yeah. I mean, that's not nuclear science. That's just so ordinary. I mean, you walk into people's place, you say, how do you do?
Right, right, right. And
You
that's,
know that.
this is so powerful. That's why what you said and what you've shared and what you've offered as words of power, as words of reflection. These are the types of words of power, words of reflection outside of, we can easily go into dates, we can easily go into time zones and all of that. However, to speak of how we need to give authentic, make sure I put that word first, authentic and respectful recognition, justice, and development. That was supposed to be the theme for the International Decade for People, the first International Decade for People of African Descent, from January 1st, 2015 to December 31st, 2024. Here we are in the final month, the final weeks, And we still have more than 75% of our African community that had no idea that the United Nations designated from January 2015 to December 2024 as the
Right.
International Decade for People of African Descent, with a theme of recognition, justice, and development for people of African descent. And if we look at history and look at what has happened in these last decade, that was supposed to be about recognition, justice, and development, we saw some of the least amount of recognition, some of the most horrific forms of injustice,
That's
and
right. And disrespect.
definitely, and definitely some disregard and outright exploitative forms of lack development for
Yes.
people of African descent. So hopefully the General Assembly in its infinite wisdom will gather as they're gathering now and declare a second international decade
Yes.
for
But
people of
there
African.
has something has to change because, as I said, one of the things we see happening now is this whole thing of accountability. And these people have to hold themselves accountable for their failures because they're having more failures than they're having successes right now.
Correct.
And what is
Correct.
going to happen in this period where, I mean, if you look at what's happening in the celestial space, if you look at what's happening in the earth space, you're getting the same story. Things need to change. And so you're going to find that anything that's not on a firm and sincere foundation stands the risk of falling because it cannot face that question of accountability. It cannot stand up to be counted. It cannot stand up to be held responsible for its mandate because it's way out of line with anything that is intended to do. We're declaring all these things, but what are we doing after the declaration? What are we doing after the declaration? I tell people generally, yes, pray. And it's a good thing to pray, and we all know that prayer is powerful. But anytime you pray, when you get up, be prepared to be part of the fulfillment of your prayers.
That
This
might
is
need
who
to
we
be said.
are.
You might need to say that a little louder to the people in the back of the room. I don't think everybody. I know the front row and the choir hear you. But
Oh,
in the
yes.
back, in the far, in that corner over south.
Yeah, but some of these organizations are not in the back of the room. They're up front and personal,
Mm,
and they
mm,
just declare and they declare. But what are they doing in a concrete way? Sometimes they're not even talking to the people they're declaring about. You
ah,
know? And you've heard me say this before. Reparation for me is a good example. A good example. Who has done the divination with the ancestors to say what will appease your spirit? We all here second guessing. We want this, we want that, and everybody wants to talk about money and where money going. Who has done the divination to ask the ancestral energies? Because they're not dead. If we talk about ancestors, we know they're alive. We know that in spirit space they're alive. They might not be as well as we'd want them to be, but we're working on that. Who has done what is necessary to say what it is would appease these how much million ancestors who have been badly put upon? We're putting our ideas and opinions out there. We half the time we don't take the time to understand their culture. It's not every culture you can go in and just say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and it's done. No, no. When you've offended people's spirit among our ancestors, when you offended people's spirit, sorry, I'm sorry, and you're going about your business, it's not enough. There has to be the processes we talk about as appeasement. These have to be done. Honor has to be restored.
mhm.
And so we're pronouncing and we're talking, but many of us are not taking the time to really investigate and to see how we bring proper protocol to some of the things with which we're engaging. How you bring proper protocol. Do you bring what is known to the people? When you
And
come
what?
and apologize, which language you're going to use? English? The language that colonized them and did all of that. Listen to me now. So, this is a good, I think we're at a good place, because we're at a place where we're being seriously asked to reflect. And going forward, if we don't do that well, we're not going to be, doing well as part of the future generation. We're going to fall by the wayside
Correct.
because the
Correct.
changes must come. They must be made. If we are to survive, if we are to be able to make decisions for the seventh generation, we need to make some changes. We need to do some things differently. We need
Correct.
to do more and talk less. That's our old message from way back when. But we're still doing too much talking. As the ancestors said, everybody's saying ancestors, ancestors now. Okay, there was a time they weren't saying. Now they're saying, but they don't know what it means. It's still a blank slate. A set of people that don't have faces. The ancestors I was writing the other day, because that's one of the ways they express themselves through me. And the what came through was like, nobody will really understand, because who has stopped to count their tears? In all
Right.
those people in the slave ships coming here, have we stopped to count the tears they shed? Have we stopped to count, even imagine the number of tears? And in one of the places, said, did the tears fall one by one, or did they come bucket load by bucket load?
Hmm. Yeah. Well,
Did
that's
we,
why.
how do we count the tears? And we're going to talk about reparation. Have we counted the tears? Can we say to somebody, you need to cry a million tears to even come close to what our ancestors cried? So tell me about reparation.
Well,
Have
this
we
is what
counted
I'm going to
tears?
say. This is what I'm going to say because it appears that there's someone that's trying to shift the flow of what we're speaking to in terms of truth to power here. So, whoever is putting these particular commentaries, I want to make sure that they understand that this is not acceptable. So, whoever JSJD is, I call them out. And I would encourage you to remove yourself from this platform because this is not acceptable. These commentaries are to be deleted. And I implore you, in the name of all that's honorable, to remove yourself from that space.
Yes, but people are where they are. Perhaps it's a good reason for that person to stay, because that person's spirit is hearing what we're saying. That's probably one of the reasons they're putting these comments. Whatever the
Okay.
comments are, I'm not able to see.
Okay. No
But
worries. No worries.
that doesn't bother me in the least. They're where they are, and we accept that. And I love you, my brother, my sister, whoever you are. But know that truth is not a matter of opinion. And we're
Right.
going forward into a space where we have to work as community, or else we will all fail. African people, Black people, we're strongest when we work as a collective. So the dissenting voices are merely going to hold you back. You're going to fall by the wayside if you don't get to the program, if you don't start extending a duty of care to your neighbor, to the people within your sphere of influence. If you don't start show and live in a way that says, I care about you and I know you care about me. I've got your back, you've got mine. If we don't really walk in that sense of community,
I hear you.
you notice that is only one creation story that talk about making man and making a man and making a woman. Only one creation story goes that way, because
Mhm.
many other creation stories talk about community. Okay, so you choose your creation story, my brother. You choose your creation story and live your life accordingly, but live it sincerely and live it authentically, my brother, my sister, whoever you are. I love you. Just try to be authentic in what you're doing and what you're saying. Find your own truth if you need to, because my
Mhm.
truth may not be your truth.
Mhm. Mhm.
But we need to coexist in this place, and we need to know what we give value to. And that's another story for going forward into this new period of time that we are talking about. What do we value? What do we hold sacred? For example, women are not sacred in our societies anymore. Women who are, people say things like, well, you want to destroy a people, you destroy the women. You want women birth men and they birth themselves. Men, they birth women, and women are not sacred. Life is not sacred. Women are not. So what are we going to value?
Mhm.
What are we going to hold sacred?
Mhm. This came up today too. It's the synergy of what keeps happening, of how important it is to see our spaces as sacred, to see
That's
our
correct.
women as sacred, and it's not to say that we don't see men as sacred, because women have to hold up men because we push and birth
Birth
men
them. We
and
birth
women.
them.
So
We
it's a
birth
very
them.
different, right, so it's a very different kind of vibe. So I'm grateful for the sisters that are on the platform that are saying that yes, people hate the truth. Yes, they're saying that it's important that we speak the truth and that we keep speaking the truth no matter what. No matter what, because these are the things, as we're speaking, and you touched on something that I would be remiss if I didn't highlight that. And you're right. We come into these vibes, and I am so grateful that it's important that persons recognize the power of the feminine, not disregarding the presence and power of the masculine, but just that in these last several centuries, the women have been marginalized, whether it's being
That's
seen,
correct.
just whether we're seen as bruja, English, whether we're seen as witches or involved in witchcraft for delivering children
Yep.
naturally, for being able to understand herbology naturally, for being able to be seers naturally and blessed
That's
by,
right.
and that it's okay for people to do sacrifice, speak of the blood of, and anoint in the blood of. But if you make a blood sacrifice in an African
Oh, you're
tradition,
in trouble.
it's a problem. And how
It's
we've
a big
put a
problem.
wall between what is voodoo, when voodoo, when you translate it, only means spirit. It only means see, if you
That's
don't
it.
know anything besides the English language, you're at a place of disempowerment, because English is not our original ancestral language. It's what we can communicate with, and with some of us are very, very talented, skilled, and are wordsmiths, and just have it naturally with eloquence and grace and meaning and passion. However, our
Right.
ancestral languages, as you're saying, even if you just speak a few words, people say amen. And if we start, don't let me get started on the root of amen, amen, amen,
And,
Rob. What amen look like, because it can offend some people because they don't know. And if you don't know, then you get caught up in believing, and if you deal with only belief, we can break that word down. Belie. I'm going to pause there, because you can belie a lot. But
hmm
knowing means, when we speak of rectisec tepinefer, we're saying in the meta nature, know yourself for your greatest and highest good. Or some people
That's
say
correct.
rectisec, know yourself. Not, we don't say believe in yourself. That's a song. That's not what we do. We speak of what you know,
Right.
and you strengthening your knowledge through wisdom and practice and integrity and loyalty, and repeat that. And some people aren't comfortable, aren't ready to do that level of truth. And when we speak
Right.
of truth, we're speaking of that principle that in our Per Ankh and Smaitawi Ankh Renaissance ancestral tradition, we use four letters, M-A-A-T, Ma'at, representing principles of truth, justice,
Well,
order,
justice.
reciprocity,
Hmm.
balance, divine righteousness, and harmony. Not everyone is ready to do that, because then, and then alone, what you just finished saying about, even with reparations, there's a lot that's happening in the reparations, because now reparations is trendy. It's
Oh,
finally
yeah.
found a space where everybody's reparation now, and that's beautiful. However, reparations of the 20th century was about just getting the check and the money, maybe the 40 acres and the mule, no, the house them,
Ah,
right? But
I see.
that's not what reparations is healing. Reparations is healing the trauma.
That's
Reparations
correct.
is restoring our family. Reparations is rebuilding our nation and our community. And some
Hmm.
people's strength is going and doing the trudge work all the time. Some people's strength is teaching people all the time. Some people's strength is being in the stealth like underground realms and doing all the militaristic, strategic planning and strengthening all the time.
Exactly.
And some people, it's being in the garden. Some people, it's being the architect and the artisans. You see, it's like there's so many, it's like the rays of sunshine. And then we have people that get caught up in me fi meism, and they, if it's not led by them, then they don't want to participate. And I love how you said what you said a few minutes ago in terms of this person that was coming in dropping comments that were inappropriate. When you said I love you, I want to share with you that comment. Okay, I'm sorry, ladies. You both are beautiful. I was just trolling a bit to watch your show, and I will quietly stop now. See the
Oh, the
power
person said that?
they wrote it right in the chat.
Oh my
So
goodness, that's so wonderful.
thank thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you were able to share what you shared with that kind of love. Because, sometimes I can get a little segmentian and I'd be like, my son, you need to scatter. But you came with so much love and so much vibe that, again, that's why I always refer to you as my spirit sister. There's words cannot give beyond anything in this podcast broadcast, because these are the types of love. This is what I am always vibing when I engage in this particular platform with the Diva crew, and what has been brought forth through our illustrious sister and visionary Queen Angela, and the other sisters that broadcast
Yes,
on here, through the week. I think it's powerful to be able to have a platform where women are sharing their respective truths, their testimonies, their solutions, their economic drivers. And I encourage persons near and far that are watching this podcast, listening to it wherever you are, support the podcasts like these that provide some inkling, some sense of self and integrity and loyalty and prosperity and balance and honor and harmony wherever you are, because that's why we do these things. It's not like we're making most of us have to do another full-time type of employment to be able to have the leisure time to do these types of things. So when you see us coming here and sharing like this and bringing powerful leaders and stewards of spirituality in its African traditional institutional frame, in addition to authorship, and we didn't get a chance for you to read a particular collection of your poetry, but we'll do that in the future because I see we have a few more minutes, and I'd like for you to share
yes.
any closing commentary that you have with my listening audience, listening and
Well,
viewing audience.
just to begin with, I'd like to give honor and respect to the spirit of this. It's a brother or a sister?
I have no idea. It's just
Yes,
initials.
but to this person, just want to give honor and respect to his spirit for being able to stand up and say, that was not appropriate. These are the kind of people we want. These are the kind of people who need to be the leaders in our communities. Somebody who is willing to say, yes, that wasn't so kosher. I'm good. I recognize that. And so, honor and respect to his spirit, her spirit, whoever it is, or the person's spirit.
Hmm.
You know, I think there's so much that we've talked about that bears repeating, but above all else, I'd just love us to remember community and the duty of care that we owe one to another. I think no matter what kind of difficulties face us upon this earth journey, if we can just maintain community, live with that appreciation of community. And I talk about the real meaning of community now as taught to us by our ancestors. If we can remember that, if we can remember to take care of our children, not to spare the rod and spoil the child, but no, to spare the child.
Right. Right.
Spare the child. Spare them from all the heartache and the tribulations that could face if we don't give them the proper guidance that they need. And this
Right.
whole thing, each of us taking care of each other's children, really the really true foundational aspects of community. No matter what we face, we will survive. We
Hmm.
will survive if we can go back to ancestral concepts of community and caring for each other as community does. I think that's one thing that's sadly missing from our lives, from our places where we live. You know, somebody live this and somebody live this and somebody, even the whole idea of neighbors. You don't hear that word so much anymore. Feels as if it's endangered. So I want to give thanks that we have the opportunity to reclaim so much.
I'm grateful because it's so much that you've shared tonight. I want to give thanks and praise for you, Nana Fofie of the Sankofa community. Just being able to spare some words of power, some words of strength, some words of ancestral veneration in the heights. I would ask that you close us out as we end this particular podcast of Our Speaks, Building Legacy, with the crew podcast here tonight, with some
Yes.
words, with some prayerful words in the ancestral language of your choice.
You know, I'll use English because everybody has come into that and understands that. But I just like to say, you know, I want to give honor and respect to all the ancestors of our various lands of the Caribbean space. I want them to know that we remember them, that we will make it, that will never forget, and that we will try to count the tears. We will try to count the tears. We'll try to remember how they felt. Sometimes we don't think about them as human beings. We talk about ancestors and that's it. But there were men, there were women, young women, children, and we want to honor all of them who felt the fear, who felt the hopelessness, who felt being torn away from a home, who felt, you know, just never having a home again, what that felt like. Because when they were enslaved, they didn't have homes. They had a place to rest their head at night, but they were not able to build homes, safe places where they and their children could be. That just never happened. And if we think about our ancestors in these ways, you know, our prayers will have to be for their continued elevation. We have to do the work to elevate them so that one day, as ancestral spirits, they will be strong and they will continue the journey of spirit, you know, to return to the source, but at a much higher level of vibration than when before we trod this earth space. Give thanks to all the ancestors of this land. Give thanks to the ancestors of all the people who have been part of this conversation. And I especially give thanks to the spirit of that brother or sister for sticking with that person and hearing how that person honored them by being upright. I am grateful.
Give thanks. And to our beloved listen, thank you again, Nana Fofie. It's been an honor and a privilege. And as I've said before, we're making this a regular frequent. So just prepare them first and third Thursdays, just so you can just be ready so we can keep this type of versation along and perhaps even have others join us to add to the versation in some of our future iterations. I know that there's going to be
Wonderful.
a lot of activities coming forward. I would like to make sure that we can also share some upkeep for the retreats that you're going to be hosting in 2025. So we'll be sharing some infomercials on that as well. And to our listeners and our beloved viewers, remember that Culture Heals Humanity Land is our foundation and spiritual harmony unifies us. And we're encouraging you to do your part of supporting us speaks by continuing to build new legacy. And with that, we say Anka Jasaneb, which is life, strength, health, wellness, and prosperity.
We
Ek
give
ek.
thanks.
We give
You.
thanks. We give thanks. It's always an honor to be joined with you. It's just
Oh, it's
amazing.
such a pleasure. It's just beyond words. Just beyond words.
Right. And we're grateful. We're grateful. So that's a comment. It takes me a minute sometimes when we're doing this. So I'm always honored. And I keep telling everybody keeps telling me, well, you just keep doing this like you have it all together and moving together. And I tell them not necessarily. I do try. I keeping it in a positive frame, and I'm looking forward to our future broadcasts so that we can at least keep this type of vibe going. So I know that people listen, and I'm always ending with a purpose to just keep the energy going. Much more. And I look forward to you
Oh,
joining us again.
Yo.
Freedom. We need freedom. Oh, yes, I want freedom. I want freedom. Have a purpose in all you do. Just make sure that your purpose is true. Have a purpose in this here life, so your life ain't full of strife. I live a purpose each and every day, so we can live in Yahweh. I have a purpose in all you do. Just make sure your life is true. Every time we walk on the street, we see all the children crying. Every time we see our day, it seems like people are lying. Everywhere that we see on this earth is supposed to be about the birth, but it's all death. And now we have